Welcome to Wealth Wisdom Daily, the channel where we break down the hidden differences between how the rich think and how the poor think, and show you how to shift your mindset toward true financial freedom. Here, money is not just about numbers, it's about perspective, habits, and the way you choose to play the game. And today, we're diving into a truth that can completely change the way you see money. Poor people think in terms of survival. Rich people think in terms of scale. If your plan is only to survive the month, you will never thrive. The wealthy don't think about scraping by. They think about multiplying, expanding, and scaling beyond the limits. In this video, you'll discover why survival thinking keeps you stuck and how scale thinking creates unstoppable momentum. Hook and introduction. The trap of survival. You work, you hustle, you pay the bills, you try to keep everything together for another 30 days. And at the end of the month, what do you have? A little left over, maybe? Or nothing at all? That is the cycle most people live in. It is called survival. And survival is not freedom. It is a cage made of fear, stress, and limitation. Think about it. If your entire financial strategy is, I just need to make it through this month, what happens next month? The same thing. And the month after that? The same thing. Survival is not a plan. It is a reaction. It is a defensive posture against life, where your entire focus is on not drowning, not falling behind, not losing what little you already have. But here's the secret that the wealthy know. Surviving and thriving are not the same thing. Rich people do not wake up asking, how can I cover my bills this month? They ask, how can I scale? How can I expand? How can I multiply what I already have? That is the difference. One mindset is about patching holes in a sinking boat. The other is about building ships strong enough to cross oceans. Survival thinking is reactive. It waits for problems to come and then tries to fix them. It is about stress management, bill juggling, and short-term relief. Scaling thinking is proactive. It creates systems, builds income streams, and sets up structures that grow even when you are not working. It is about turning money into momentum. Let me ask you, do you want to live the next 10, 20, or 30 years stuck in the survival cycle, always waiting for payday? Always balancing what little comes in with what little goes out, always feeling like your financial life is just one step away from collapse? Or do you want to shift your mind into the mode of those who expand, those who multiply, those who break out of the cage and step into freedom? This is what today's message is about, a simple but profound shift. Poor people think in terms of survival. Rich people think in terms of scale. And now, so will you. Picture two people standing by the shore. The first one is desperately clinging to a life jacket, trying not to drown. Every wave that hits is another crisis, another emergency, another bill that has to be paid. That is survival thinking. The second person? They are building a ship, piece by piece, strong, steady, scalable. And once it is ready, they don't just survive the waves, they master them. They use the ocean to travel farther, faster, and freer than anyone else. That is scale thinking. The question is, which one are you? Because here's the truth. If your financial vision ends with survival, your wealth will end with survival. If your mindset is only to make it through, you will never build enough to break free. But if your vision expands to scale, if you learn to think like the wealthy, you will no longer be trapped by today's fears. You will be powered by tomorrow's possibilities. This is the trap of survival. It feels safe. It feels responsible. It feels like the smart thing to do in the moment. Just cover the bills. Just pay the debt. Just get through. But it is an illusion. Because the longer you stay in survival mode, the deeper you sink into it. Survival becomes your ceiling, and every month becomes a repeat of the last. So today, we are going to break this cycle. We are going to expose the trap, and we are going to open the door to something bigger, something bolder, something scalable. Remember this line: survival is not wealth. Scale is wealth. By the end of this journey, you will understand why survival thinking is defensive, small, and limiting, and why scaling thinking is offensive, expansive, and unstoppable. You will see the traps you have been caught in, and more importantly, you will learn how to step out of them. So take a deep breath, open your mind, and get ready to shift. Because the difference between the poor and the rich does not begin in their bank account. It begins in their mindset. Poor people think in terms of survival. Rich people think in terms of scale. And now, so will you. Survival thinking. The scarcity lens. Most people live their financial lives through the narrow window of survival. Every decision, every action, every thought about money is filtered through the same question: how do I make it through the month? This is the survival lens. It shapes how you see opportunities, how you respond to challenges, and how you define success. And the truth is, this lens doesn't just limit your money, it limits your entire life. When you live in survival mode, your vision shrinks. Instead of thinking about the next year or the next decade, you think about the next week, the next paycheck, the next due date on a bill. Instead of planning how to grow, you plan how to cover. Instead of dreaming, you calculate. Your world becomes smaller, not because there are no opportunities, but because your mind is trained to only see the minimum required to survive. Survival thinking is defensive. It is about protecting what little you have, rather than building what you could have. It is about reacting to problems as they come, instead of proactively creating systems to prevent those problems in the first place. It is about patching holes in a sinking boat, instead of building a stronger ship. Think of how this plays out in everyday life. A person in survival mode gets paid on Friday, and by Monday, most of that paycheck is already gone. Rent, groceries, electricity, phone, debt payments. The leftover is tiny, sometimes non-existent. And when an emergency comes, the car breaks down, the child gets sick, the job cuts hours, survival mode collapses. Why? Because it was never designed to thrive. It was designed only to scrape by. Survival thinking is also rooted in fear. Fear of losing a job, fear of running out of money, fear of the next unexpected bill. Fear becomes the silent partner in every financial decision. And fear is expensive. It robs you of clarity. It robs you of creativity. It robs you of the courage to take the very steps that could free you from survival. This is why people in survival mode often make poor financial choices, not because they are careless, but because their perspective is limited. They buy what feels urgent, not what is important. They chase short-term relief instead of long-term growth. They cling to stability, even if that stability is slowly killing their future. They say, "I can't afford to invest," not realizing that not investing ensures they will never escape. The scarcity lens distorts reality. When you look at life through scarcity, you believe there is never enough money, never enough time, never enough energy. And because you believe there is never enough, you settle for less. You shrink your goals. You lower your standards. You tell yourself that survival is the best you can hope for. But here is the truth. Survival is not the best you can do. Survival is the lowest bar you can set. And yet millions live their entire lives under this bar, trapped by the scarcity lens, unable to imagine more. The wealthy see money differently because they look through a different lens. But before we explore that, we must fully understand what survival thinking costs you. Because until you see the trap clearly, you will continue to mistake it for safety. Survival thinking costs you time. Every hour you spend worrying about bills is an hour you could have spent building something greater. Survival thinking costs you energy. Stress drains the energy you need to create, to innovate, to scale. Survival thinking costs you opportunity, because when you are focused only on the immediate, you never reach for the exponential. Imagine two workers. One earns just enough to cover the month. Every decision he makes is about stretching that paycheck as far as it will go. He bargains for small discounts. He avoids risk at all costs. He feels proud when he makes it to the next month without sinking. The other worker, earning the same income, chooses to think differently. Instead of, "How can I stretch this paycheck?" he asks, "How can I turn this paycheck into a seed?" The first is stuck in survival. The second is already stepping into scale. The survival lens keeps you small. It convinces you that playing safe is smart, when in reality it is the riskiest choice of all. Because if all you do is survive, you never get ahead. Inflation eats your savings. Emergencies eat your budget. Stress eats your peace. Survival mode is not security. It is slow decline disguised as safety. And yet, the trap is seductive. Why? Because survival gives you the illusion of control. It makes you feel like you are managing life, when in truth, life is managing you. You are not directing your money. Your money is directing you. You are not choosing your path. Your bills are choosing it for you. This is the tragedy of survival thinking. It makes you feel responsible, but it keeps you poor. It makes you feel cautious, but it robs you of growth. It makes you feel safe, but it locks you in the very cycle you want to escape. To break out, you must first recognize when you are wearing the scarcity lens. Do you only think in terms of this month? Do you define success as not falling behind? Do you believe you don't have enough to start building wealth? If so, you are living in survival mode. But here's the hope. Lenses can be changed. Mindsets can shift. The moment you choose to see money not as something to survive with, but as something to multiply, you start to escape. The scarcity lens blinds you to abundance. The scale lens opens your eyes to it. And that shift, though it begins in your thoughts, changes everything about your financial life. Survival mode will never give you freedom. It will only give you another month of scraping by. But once you take off the scarcity lens, you begin to see money not as something that runs out, but as something that expands. Not as something you work for, but as something that can work for you. This is why the poor stay poor. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack discipline, but because they lack the lens of scale. They are trapped in survival, and survival has become their ceiling. The question you must ask yourself is this: am I just surviving or am I building? Because you cannot do both at the same time. The survival lens and the scale lens are opposites. One keeps you trapped in fear, the other sets you free into abundance. And that is where we turn next, into the psychology of survival, why fear and stress keep you trapped, and how to break free. The psychology of survival: fear, stress, and limitation. Survival is not just a financial condition, it is a psychological state. It is a mindset that seeps into your thoughts, your emotions, and even your identity. The reason survival thinking is so powerful and so destructive is because it is fueled by fear. And fear, when it becomes the foundation of your financial life, shapes every decision you make. Fear of not having enough. Fear of losing what little you already have. Fear of the next unexpected bill, the next emergency, the next crisis. This fear is not abstract. It is visceral. You feel it in your chest when the rent is due and the paycheck is late. You feel it in your stomach when you swipe your card and wonder if it will be declined. You feel it in your mind when you wake up at 3 a.m. and start calculating again how you will cover everything this month. This is the psychology of survival. Constant anxiety, constant stress, constant limitation. You are not dreaming about the future. You are not building for tomorrow. You are fighting to make it through today. And here is the danger. When fear becomes normal, you stop noticing it. You think stress is just part of life. You think living paycheck to paycheck is how it is. You think debt is unavoidable, emergencies are constant, and exhaustion is permanent. Survival doesn't just drain your bank account, it rewires your brain. Psychologists call this scarcity mindset. When resources feel limited, your brain narrows its focus. It becomes obsessed with the immediate problem, the overdue bill, the late rent, the urgent debt. And in that narrow tunnel, you lose sight of the bigger picture. You cannot think long-term when your brain is screaming about the short term. You cannot plan growth when you are busy fighting fires. This tunnel vision is why poor people often stay poor, not because they lack intelligence, but because fear hijacks their mental bandwidth. When you are worried about survival, you cannot access the creativity, the clarity, or the courage required for scaling. Let's be clear. Stress is not just emotional. It has a real cost. Stress eats your health. Stress drains your energy. Stress shortens your patience. Stress robs you of sleep. And when your body is worn down by stress, your ability to make good decisions collapses. That's why survival mode doesn't just keep you stuck financially, it traps you mentally and physically too. Think of it this way. Imagine you are running on a treadmill. It takes all your effort just to stay in place. You sweat, you strain, you burn energy. But no matter how hard you run, you are not moving forward. That is survival psychology. It feels like effort, it feels like work, but it doesn't produce progress. And the longer you stay on that treadmill, the more exhausted you become. Fear-based decisions always look small. You choose the safe option, not the bold one. You pick the quick fix, not the lasting solution. You cling to stability, even if that stability is slowly killing your potential. This is why so many people stay in jobs they hate, because survival tells them, at least you're safe. This is why so many people never invest, because survival tells them, you might lose what little you have. This is why so many people never start businesses, never chase opportunities, never take risks, because survival whispers, better not, it's too dangerous. But here's the paradox. Survival feels safe, but it is the most dangerous mindset of all. Why? Because it guarantees decline. Inflation erodes your money. Emergencies wipe out your savings. Time passes while you stand still. Fear convinces you to cling to what you have, but what you have is already disappearing. Stress, fear, limitation. This is the toxic triangle of survival. It locks you in a cycle of repeating the same month over and over. You wake up, work, pay bills, stress, repeat. It is not life, it is existence, and existence is not freedom. Rich people think differently because they break this triangle. They understand that fear is natural, but not a guide. They understand that stress is a signal, not a strategy. They understand that limitation is an illusion created by mindset, not reality. Where poor people let fear dictate their choices, the wealthy use vision to direct theirs. To escape survival psychology, you must confront fear directly. You must stop letting fear of loss control your actions. Instead, you must cultivate courage, not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. Courage is the bridge from survival to scale. The truth is, the difference between the poor and the rich is not that one has fear and the other does not. Both feel fear. The poor obey it. The rich override it. The poor let fear shrink their world. The rich let vision expand theirs. Stress will always be part of life, but how you respond to it determines your future. You can let stress shut you down, or you can let it push you to build systems that free you from it. You can let limitation define you, or you can use it as the starting point to create abundance. Think of every great breakthrough in history. None of it came from survival thinking. It came from vision, from courage, from refusing to let fear dictate the future. If humanity had stayed in survival mode, we would still be in caves, clinging to fires, praying we could last another winter. Progress is born from scale, not from survival. So here's the challenge. Look at your financial life honestly. Are your decisions driven by fear? Are you making choices out of stress? Are you defining your possibilities by your limitations? If so, you are still living in survival psychology. And as long as you stay there, nothing will change. But if you can step back, if you can breathe and see beyond the tunnel, you can start to shift. You can start asking different questions. Not how do I make it through, but how do I build beyond this? Not how do I protect what I have, but how do I multiply it? Not how do I avoid loss, but how do I create abundance? That is the path forward. That is the psychology of scale. And in the next chapter, we will explore it directly. We will look at how the wealthy train their minds not to settle for enough, but to expand into abundance. How they replace fear with systems, stress with vision, and limitation with leverage. Because the moment you stop thinking in terms of survival and start thinking in terms of scale, your financial life will never be the same again. Scale thinking, building beyond enough. If survival thinking is about getting through today, scale thinking is about building for tomorrow. It is about refusing to measure life in weeks or months, and instead thinking in years, decades, and even generations. Survival is about holding on. Scaling is about multiplying. Survival is about defense. Scaling is about offense. And this shift in mindset is the dividing line between those who stay stuck in cycles of scarcity and those who create abundance that grows beyond themselves. When you think in terms of scale, you do not ask, how do I make it to the end of the month? You ask, how do I create something that keeps growing, even when I'm not working? The poor and middle class measure their security by what they earn in 30 days. The wealthy measure theirs by the systems they've built, the assets they own, and the momentum they've created that continues to expand without their constant effort. Scale thinking begins with a simple but radical belief. There is always more. More opportunities, more resources, more ways to grow. While survival thinking narrows your vision to the minimum required, scale thinking expands your vision to the maximum possible. One keeps you locked in fear, the other unleashes your creativity. Think about how a farmer approaches the land. A survival-minded farmer plants just enough seeds to feed his family for the season. His measure of success is simply, did we eat this year? But a scale-minded farmer thinks differently. He plants beyond what his family needs. He plants for trade, for storage, for expansion, for the next season and the next generation. He is not content with enough. He is building abundance. That is what the rich do with money. They do not stop when their needs are met. They build beyond. They scale their efforts so that money continues to grow, multiplying into new opportunities, new businesses, new investments. Enough is not the goal. More than enough. Abundance is the standard. Survival thinking says, I need to cover my bills. Scale thinking says, I need to create systems that cover my bills forever. Survival thinking says, I need this job to survive. Scale thinking says, how do I create income streams so I'm never dependent on a job again? Survival thinking says, I can't afford to take risks. Scale thinking says, I can't afford not to. Scaling is proactive. It is about building before the problem comes. Instead of waiting for emergencies, you build buffers. Instead of waiting for opportunities, you create them. Instead of waiting for income, you design systems that produce it automatically. This is why wealthy people build businesses, not just careers. A job may give you money today, but a business can scale beyond your time. A business can grow while you sleep. A business can multiply income streams. And once a system is built, it can be replicated, franchised, automated, or expanded. That is the power of scale. Think about compounding. Most people see money as linear. You work, you earn, you spend. It resets every month. But the wealthy see money as exponential. You plant, you nurture, you multiply. Each seed of money, if reinvested, produces more seeds. Over time, the growth is not addition, it is multiplication. And multiplication is the essence of scaling. Scaling is also about thinking bigger than yourself. Poor people think in terms of survival for themselves. Rich people think in terms of scale that extends to others. They build companies that employ hundreds. They build investments that create opportunities. They build assets that last for generations. Scaling is not selfish. It is expansive. It creates abundance that overflows. But here's what stops most people. They confuse scale with greed. They think wanting more is wrong. They think abundance is selfish. But the truth is, abundance allows you to do more, give more, create more. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you only ever have enough for yourself, you cannot help anyone else. Scaling creates overflow, and overflow is what changes lives. Scaling also transforms the way you see problems. To someone in survival mode, problems are threats. They fear the next bill, the next repair, the next downturn. To someone in scale mode, problems are opportunities. They ask, how can I solve this, not just for me, but for thousands of others? That is how entrepreneurs are born. That is how innovations are created. That is how fortunes are built. For example, when a survival thinker struggles with debt, they think, how do I pay this off? A scale thinker asks, how do I create income streams so I'm never dependent on a job again? Survival shrinks you. Scaling expands you. Survival limits your imagination. Scaling unleashes it. Survival keeps you trapped in the present. Scaling launches you into the future. Here's the bottom line. If your vision ends with survival, your wealth ends with survival. But if your vision expands to scale, your wealth expands with it. Money becomes not just something you earn, but something you grow. It becomes not just a paycheck, but a system. Not just income, but momentum. Scaling is how you break free from the cycle of survival. It is the decision to stop fighting to stay afloat and start building ships that cross oceans. It is the courage to stop asking what is enough and start asking what is possible. And once you begin thinking this way, everything changes. Your goals expand, your actions shift, your creativity awakens, and your wealth begins to multiply. In the next chapter, we will dive deeper into the core of scaling, how money stops being about consumption and starts being about multiplication, how the poor spend what they earn, while the rich plant what they earn so it grows. Because scaling is not just about thinking bigger, it is about using money differently, not as an end, but as a tool for multiplication. Money as a tool, from consumption to multiplication. Most people treat money as something to spend. They see it as fuel for consumption, a way to buy the things they need or want right now. They work, they earn, and they spend. End of story. But the wealthy treat money very differently. For them, money is not primarily for consumption, it is for multiplication. It is a tool, a seed, a worker, a force that can be put to use to generate more. And this difference, perhaps more than anything else, explains why the gap between the poor and the rich keeps expanding. When money is only used for consumption, it disappears. It moves from your hand into someone else's pocket. The moment you spend it, it's gone. The shoes wear out, the car depreciates, the meal is digested and forgotten. Consumption is temporary. Multiplication is permanent. Consumption satisfies today. Multiplication builds tomorrow. The poor and middle class often say, "I don't have enough money to invest." But this reveals the mindset problem. They see money only as something to survive with, not something to grow with. They treat every dollar like a lifeline for today instead of a building block for tomorrow. The wealthy say, "Every dollar is an employee. My job is to put those employees to work." That is why they grow richer even when starting with less. Think about this. A dollar spent on consumption is gone forever. A dollar invested into multiplication has the potential to come back with friends. You can spend $100 on a night out and it disappears the next day. Or you can invest $100 into a small venture, into knowledge, into assets, and over time that $100 can turn into $200, $500, $1,000 or more. The wealthy are not just buying things with money, they are buying freedom, time, and the power of compounding. Multiplication is not only about traditional investing, like stocks or real estate. It's about a mindset of putting money into anything that creates more. It can be learning a new skill that makes you more valuable. It can be starting a side business. It can be purchasing tools that allow you to scale your productivity. It can be acquiring ownership in something that generates recurring income. The wealthy see money as a lever, and they are always asking, how can this dollar lift something bigger? This is why poor people remain poor even when they earn more. When extra money comes in, they increase consumption. A raise means a bigger car payment. A bonus means a nicer vacation. Tax refunds disappear into new gadgets or debt repayments. Nothing wrong with enjoying rewards, but if all your money ever does is feed your consumption, you'll always return to zero. The rich, on the other hand, funnel extra money into multiplication. Raises, bonuses, windfalls. They see these as opportunities to buy more seeds, not more snacks. To multiply money, you must shift your perspective. Money is not the end goal. Money is a tool. Just as a hammer is meant to build houses, money is meant to build systems, assets, and opportunities that continue to grow. You wouldn't use a hammer only to admire it. You use it to create. In the same way, money should not sit idle or vanish in consumption. It should be employed to create more. Let's consider a simple example. Imagine you have $1,000. A survival mindset says, "I need this money for bills." A consumption mindset says, "I deserve to treat myself with this money." But a multiplication mindset asks, how can I turn this $1,000 into $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 or more? The same $1,000 used differently produces radically different futures. The wealthy understand something crucial. Multiplication is not instant, but it is inevitable if you are consistent. Seeds take time to grow. Investments take time to mature. Businesses take time to scale. But if you plant, nurture, and reinvest, multiplication becomes a law of life. Just as a tree produces fruit year after year, money that is multiplied continues to produce harvests long after the initial seed was planted. This is why they focus on assets, not liabilities. An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out. Poor people buy liabilities and call them assets: the fancy car, the oversized home, the latest gadgets. Rich people acquire true assets, properties, businesses, stocks, intellectual property, things that generate income even while they sleep. They understand that every dollar invested in an asset is a dollar that has the potential to multiply for years to come. Here's the golden rule of multiplication. Never kill the seed. The poor consume the seed. The rich plant it. If you always eat your seed, you will never have a harvest. But if you plant your seed, nurture it, and let it grow, the harvest will feed you and generations after you. Of course, multiplication requires patience. That's why many never experience it. Consumption gives immediate gratification. Multiplication demands delayed gratification. The survival thinker says, "I can't wait. I need relief now." The scale thinker says, "I can wait because I'm building something bigger." This patience, this willingness to delay gratification is one of the greatest wealth multipliers of all. Money as a tool also means understanding leverage. A tool by itself may seem small, but when used properly, it multiplies effort. $10,000 sitting in a bank account does little. $10,000 invested wisely can create streams of income, build assets, or scale a business. It's not the amount of money, it's the use of money that determines its power. The irony is that people in survival mode often work the hardest, yet their money works the least. They sweat, they strain, they labor, but every dollar they earn is immediately consumed. Meanwhile, the rich focus on making money work for them. They put it into systems, into investments, into opportunities, so that their money never sleeps. Every dollar is on duty. Every dollar is producing. If you want to shift from survival to scale, you must start by changing your relationship with money. Stop asking, "What can this buy me today?" and start asking, "What can this build me tomorrow?" Stop treating money as a reward for work and start treating it as a worker that must produce results. Stop consuming all you earn and start multiplying what you earn. Because the truth is, you will never spend your way into wealth. You will only multiply your way into it. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into how the poor limit their goals to enough, while the rich expand their goals to abundance. Because money, when treated as a tool for multiplication, does not just meet needs, it creates possibilities. And those possibilities are endless when you stop consuming and start multiplying. Poor people limit goals to enough. Rich people expand to abundance. The word enough sounds safe. It sounds responsible. It sounds like the goal every normal person should pursue. Enough to pay the bills, enough to eat, enough to get by. But here is the hidden truth. When you limit your financial goals to enough, you build a ceiling over your life, and that ceiling becomes your reality. Poor and middle-class people often make this mistake. They structure their entire financial world around covering the basics, and once they reach that, they stop. The rich think differently. They do not aim for enough. They aim for abundance. Abundance is not greed. Abundance is not about excess for the sake of showing off. Abundance is about expansion. It is about creating more than you need so you can live with freedom, give with generosity, and build with vision. Abundance allows you to stop thinking only about survival and start thinking about legacy. Survival thinkers ask, "How do I make enough to live?" Scale thinkers ask, "How do I build enough to thrive, to give, to expand, to keep multiplying?" One is a defensive goal. The other is an offensive mission. Let's look at an example. Imagine two families. Family A earns just enough to cover their monthly expenses. They feel proud when the bills are paid on time. For them, financial success equals not being late. They live in constant anxiety that one unexpected expense could break them, because it often does. Their mindset says, as long as we have enough, we're okay. Family B, however, thinks differently. They cover their bills, but they don't stop there. They set goals not just to survive, but to create abundance. They ask, how can we double our income streams?
How can we build assets that pay us every month? How can we expand what we have so that money continues to grow? For them, success is not about enough. It is about creating a buffer, building a surplus, multiplying resources until they are no longer limited by monthly bills, but empowered by ongoing abundance. The key difference is vision. When you limit yourself to enough, you never train your mind to think bigger. You never stretch your imagination beyond what is immediately necessary. You build your entire financial house on the idea of limitation, and then you wonder why it never expands. Rich people, on the other hand, program their minds for more. They know that money follows vision. The bigger the vision, the greater the opportunities. Enough is a trap because it feels comfortable. Once the bills are covered, once there is food on the table, once the lights are on, you feel safe. But safety without growth is just stagnation. Inflation eats away at your money. Emergencies always arise. Life expands in cost. Enough today becomes not enough tomorrow. If your financial target never goes beyond enough, you will always feel like you are one step behind. Abundance creates freedom. When you have more than enough, you stop living with financial anxiety. You stop checking your bank account before every decision. You stop fearing the next emergency. Abundance gives you options. The option to invest, to take risks, to travel, to give generously, to live on your own terms. This is why the wealthy always aim higher. They understand that setting goals too small is just as dangerous as setting none at all. If you only aim for enough, you will spend your life in cycles of covering, catching up, and barely scraping by. But if you aim for abundance, even if you fall short, you will end up far beyond the person who never reached higher. Think of it this way. If your target is the ceiling, you will never touch the sky. But if your target is the sky, you might just end up among the stars. Abundance is not about having more for the sake of pride. It is about refusing to let enough be the limit of your life. Rich people expand their goals because they know that wealth is not built by accident. It is built with intention. If your intention is only survival, you will never create overflow. But if your intention is abundance, you will always create more than you need. And that more is what builds freedom, opportunities, and legacy. Abundance thinking also changes the way you use money. Poor people spend every extra dollar the moment it arrives. They say, "I finally have enough to buy this." Rich people invest every extra dollar into assets that multiply. They say, "This dollar can create 5 more." They are not chasing comfort, they are creating capacity. Capacity is what separates the rich from the poor. Poor people cap themselves at enough. Rich people expand their capacity to handle more. More responsibility, more opportunity, more wealth. That expansion comes not from greed, but from vision. And here is something powerful. Abundance thinking is contagious. When you think in abundance, you attract others who do the same. You see opportunities others miss. You collaborate instead of compete. You give instead of hoard. Abundance creates a mindset of expansion that multiplies beyond money. It multiplies into relationships, into opportunities, into influence. So how do you shift from enough to abundance? You start by refusing to accept survival as your final goal. You stop celebrating just covering the bills and start aiming to create overflow. You reframe money not as a lifeline, but as a tool for growth. You ask bigger questions, not "How do I survive this month?" but "How do I build streams of income that last for years?" Not "How do I pay this debt?" but "How do I design a system that eliminates debt forever?" Abundance requires courage. It means stepping outside the comfort zone of enough and daring to believe that more is possible. It means building systems, investing, scaling, multiplying, all of which require effort, patience, and persistence. But the reward is freedom. The reward is overflow. The reward is never again being trapped by the prison of enough. Here's the truth. If you only aim for enough, you will always be behind. If you aim for abundance, you create a future where enough is automatic and overflow is your reality. The poor stop at survival. The rich expand into abundance. And that difference in vision creates a difference in destiny. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into the mechanics of how the rich achieve this abundance. It is not just about bigger goals, it is about building systems that scale. Because while survival relies on self, scaling relies on structure. And once you understand that systems, not just effort, create wealth, you will see why abundance is not an accident, but a design.
Systems versus self. Why scaling requires structures. Most people live their financial lives depending only on themselves. Their income depends on their hours, their effort, their labor. They wake up, go to work, trade time for money, and if they stop working, the money stops flowing. This is survival thinking in its purest form, relying on the self alone. But here is the truth. No one can scale on self alone. Scaling requires systems. A system is anything that produces results without demanding your constant input. A system works even when you don't. A system creates leverage, and leverage is the foundation of wealth. Poor people depend on their own back and their own hours. Rich people build systems that multiply their effort, their reach, and their income far beyond what they could ever achieve alone. Think of it like this. If you are carrying buckets of water, you can only deliver as much as your strength and time allow. That is self-dependence. But if you build a pipeline, water flows even while you sleep. That is a system. One is survival, the other is scale. Survival thinkers are stuck in the cycle of self. Their entire financial life is bound by what they can personally do. They may even work harder than the wealthy, but their results remain small because they are limited by hours in a day. A nurse, a teacher, a mechanic, no matter how skilled, if they depend only on themselves, their income ends when their shift does. Rich people know this trap and escape it by building structures. Systems come in many forms. A business is a system. Once it is set up, employees, processes, and structures continue to create value whether the owner is there or not. Investments are systems. Stocks, real estate, royalties. They generate income without demanding daily labor. Technology is a system. An online platform, an automated tool, or digital assets can work 24/7, creating value around the clock. The poor and middle class say, "I work for my money." The wealthy say, "My systems work for me." That shift is monumental. It is the difference between being trapped in survival and being free to scale. Here's the painful reality. As long as your income depends only on you, you will always live in survival mode, because no matter how much you earn, you cannot escape the limits of time and energy. You only have 24 hours. You only have so much strength. You cannot work forever. But a system can. A system doesn't get tired. A system doesn't need rest. A system doesn't stop when you do. This is why wealthy people spend more time building structures than chasing paychecks. They know that systems are slow to build but powerful once established. The pipeline takes time to construct, but once it's finished, the flow is endless. Survival thinkers want quick results now. Scale thinkers invest in structures that pay forever. Another key point: systems create consistency. Depending on yourself alone means your income rises and falls with your performance. If you're sick, tired, or unemployed, income disappears. But with systems in place, money continues. Rent from property still comes in. Dividends still get paid. Businesses still operate.
Systems create financial stability that self alone cannot provide. Building systems also requires trust and delegation. Many people never scale because they cannot let go of control. They believe no one can do the job as well as they can, so they try to do everything themselves. But this is self-dependence disguised as responsibility. The wealthy understand that delegation is leverage. By trusting others, by building teams, by creating processes, they multiply their capacity. Think about the greatest companies in the world. No billionaire built wealth by themselves. They built structures, teams, systems, organizations that continued to expand far beyond their personal ability. If Jeff Bezos had tried to pack and ship every Amazon order himself, he would still be stuck in his garage. If Elon Musk tried to assemble every Tesla with his own hands, there would be no Tesla. Scale requires systems. Here's a challenge. Look at your financial life and ask yourself, do I have systems or do I only have self? Do you have assets that work when you don't? Do you have processes that create income without your daily effort? Or is everything tied to your next paycheck, your next shift, your next hour of labor? If it's the latter, you are still in survival mode, no matter how much you earn. The truth is, you cannot work your way into wealth. You must build your way into it. Wealth is not the result of harder labor, but of smarter structures. And the earlier you start building systems, the faster you escape survival. Survival says, I will work harder. Scale says, I will build smarter. Survival says, I'll handle it myself. Scale says, I'll design a process so it works without me. Survival keeps you chained to your hours. Scale frees you to multiply beyond them. So what systems can you start building today? Maybe it's creating a side business that runs online. Maybe it's investing in an asset that produces passive income. Maybe it's automating part of your work so it continues without your daily presence. Maybe it's learning to delegate tasks and build a team. Every system, no matter how small, is a step out of survival and into scale. The wealthy know this secret. Systems create freedom. Without them, you will always be limited by yourself. With them, you unlock the ability to multiply. And once you build enough systems, you are no longer just surviving. You are scaling. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into how the rich scale their income streams. Because one system is good, but multiple systems create momentum. Survival depends on a single paycheck. Scale builds rivers of income that flow together into abundance.
Scaling income streams, more than one river. If you rely on only one source of income, you are always one step away from crisis. One lost job, one failed business, one economic downturn, and everything collapses. That is survival living. Survival depends on a single river. If it dries up, there is nothing left to drink. The wealthy understand this truth deeply. They never depend on one river. They build many. They create multiple streams of income that flow together, feeding one another, expanding into abundance. This is one of the greatest differences between poor thinking and rich thinking. The poor and middle class almost always depend on one stream, their job, a paycheck. They trade their time for money, and that paycheck becomes the lifeline for everything. The problem is obvious. If the paycheck stops, so does life as they know it. This is why layoffs, medical emergencies, or sudden disruptions feel catastrophic to survival thinkers. Their entire financial world is built on one fragile stream. The rich, however, design their lives differently. They may start with one stream, but they quickly expand into many. Salary may be one, but dividends, businesses, rental income, royalties, and investments are others. They create redundancy, safety, and power by building multiple rivers that flow at the same time. If one dries up, the others keep flowing. And the more streams they have,
the more abundance becomes their normal state. Think about it this way. Nature survives because it has many sources of water. A single river may flood or dry up, but the ecosystem thrives when there are multiple streams, lakes, and underground reserves. Wealth works the same way. One paycheck makes you vulnerable. Multiple streams make you resilient. But income streams do more than protect you. They multiply you. A person with one paycheck can only grow linearly, a raise here, an overtime shift there. A person with multiple income streams grows exponentially. Even if each stream is small, together they create momentum. A side hustle that pays $500 a month, an investment that pays $200 in dividends, a rental property that pays $1,000. These streams add up, and once reinvested, they multiply further. This is why wealthy people often say, never depend on one source of income. The average millionaire has at least 7. That is not an accident. It is a principle. Because wealth is not about one big paycheck. It is about building rivers that never stop flowing. Scaling income streams also requires creativity. Survival thinkers often limit themselves to what they know: one job, one paycheck, one routine. Scale thinkers ask, what else is possible? They look for opportunities everywhere. They leverage skills, networks, technology, and capital to build streams beyond themselves. For example, an author writes a book once, but royalties pay year after year. That is a stream. A musician records a song, and streaming platforms pay forever. That is a stream. An investor buys into a company, and dividends arrive every quarter. That is a stream. An entrepreneur builds an online store, and sales flow even while they sleep. That is a stream. Each one requires effort up front, but once built, the system keeps working. This is the essence of scaling, shifting your focus from one-time effort to recurring flow. Survival thinkers ask, how do I make money once? Scale thinkers ask, how do I make money again and again from the same effort? Here's the beauty of multiple streams. They create freedom of choice. When you depend on one paycheck, your employer owns your time. They control when you work, how you work, and what you earn. But when you have multiple income streams, you regain control. You can leave toxic jobs. You can take risks. You can live life on your own terms because no single source of income holds you hostage. Another advantage? Income streams feed each other. A business generates profit that you reinvest into real estate. Real estate produces cash flow that you invest in stocks. Stocks generate dividends that fund a new side hustle. Streams flow together into rivers, rivers into lakes, lakes into oceans. Wealth is not built from one source. It is built from many that connect and multiply. But here's the challenge. Building multiple streams takes time. Survival thinkers want quick fixes. They say, I don't have time for that. Yet they spend years trapped in the same cycle, waiting for a raise that never comes, hoping for security that never arrives. Scale thinkers understand the long game. They know that small streams today can become powerful rivers tomorrow. They plant seeds in different places, water them consistently, and over time, abundance grows. To start building multiple streams, you don't need millions. You need mindset. You need the courage to start small and the wisdom to diversify. Maybe your first stream is a freelance skill. Maybe it's investing a small amount in index funds. Maybe it's renting out a room, selling products online, or creating digital content. The amount is less important than the principle. Never depend on one. Always build more than one. The poor say, I can't afford to start another stream. The rich say, I can't afford not to, because they know that every stream they build reduces their dependence on any single one, and dependence is the greatest risk of survival living. The truth is simple. If you want to escape survival, You must build beyond one paycheck. If you want to enter abundance, you must create many rivers that flow together. Because no matter how big a single paycheck is, it will never match the power of multiple streams compounding over time. So ask yourself, how many streams do you have today? 1, 2, or more? And more importantly, what new streams can you start building right now? The earlier you start, the sooner you break free. The more streams you create, the stronger your financial future becomes. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into ownership, because streams are powerful, but ownership is what makes them last. The poor rent and pay, the rich own and multiply, and ownership, more than anything else, is how you build wealth that survives for generations.
Scaling ownership, assets, equity, and compounding. There is a simple rule of wealth that separates the poor from the rich. Poor people rent and pay, while rich people own and multiply. Ownership is the foundation of lasting wealth. Income streams are powerful, but without ownership, they remain fragile. To scale your wealth beyond survival, you must shift from being a consumer to being an owner, from being a renter to being an investor, from being a borrower to being a builder. Ownership is where the real multiplication happens. When you own something of value, you are no longer trading hours for dollars. You are creating equity, value that grows over time, often without your direct effort. Ownership gives you leverage. It allows you to benefit not only from your labor, but from the labor of others, from the power of systems, and from the natural force of compounding. Let's break this down. 1. Assets versus liabilities. An asset puts money into your pocket. A liability takes money out. The poor and middle class often confuse the two. They call their car an asset, even though it drains their money with gas, insurance, and depreciation. They call their big house an asset, even though it demands monthly mortgage payments, property taxes, and maintenance that strain their budget. The truth is, unless something generates cash flow or grows in value over time, it is not an asset. It is a liability. The wealthy focus relentlessly on acquiring assets, rental properties, businesses, stocks, intellectual property, anything that earns while they sleep. They do not spend to consume, they spend to own. And because ownership produces income, that income can be reinvested to purchase more ownership. This cycle, own, earn, reinvest, is the engine of wealth. 2. Equity, the silent builder of wealth. Equity is ownership in something valuable. It might be shares in a company, a percentage of a business, or property that gains value over time. Equity builds silently, often without daily attention. That's why the rich value equity more than salary. Salary ends when the paycheck ends. Equity continues to grow. Think about this. Two people can work equally hard. One earns a salary, the other builds equity. 10 years later, the salary earner may have covered expenses, but the equity builder owns something that has multiplied in value. The employee worked for money. The owner made money work for him. This is why the wealthy often accept lower salaries in exchange for equity. They understand that equity creates long-term abundance. A small slice of ownership in the right company can be worth more than decades of wages. Survival thinkers ask, how much will I earn today? Scale thinkers ask, what will my ownership be worth tomorrow? 3. The power of compounding. Albert Einstein called compounding the eighth wonder of the world, and for good reason. Compounding turns small amounts into great fortunes, but only for those who own. You cannot compound what you do not own. The poor spend, the rich invest, and investments over time compound. Consider this. $1,000 invested at 10% annual return
becomes $2,594 in 10 years, $6,727 in 20 years, and $17,449 in 30 years. That is the silent magic of compounding. But it only works if you own assets that grow. If you spend the $1,000 on consumption, it disappears. Ownership makes it multiply. 4. Ownership creates stability and freedom. Renters live at the mercy of landlords. Borrowers live at the mercy of lenders. Employees live at the mercy of their employers. Owners, however, live with freedom. Ownership creates stability because you are no longer dependent on someone else's decisions. And it creates freedom because your wealth is not tied to your hours, but to your assets. Think of the difference between paying rent forever versus owning a home that gains value each year. One drains your money endlessly. The other increases your net worth silently. Or consider the difference between working for a business and owning one. One pays you temporarily. The other can pay you, your children, and even generations to come. 5. Scaling ownership. From one asset to many. The wealthy do not stop at owning one thing. They scale their ownership. They diversify. They acquire businesses, properties, stocks, bonds, patents, royalties. They understand that true security comes not from one asset, but from many, spread across industries and markets. If one fails, the others sustain. Ownership, when scaled, becomes unshakable. Scaling ownership also creates momentum. The income from one asset funds the purchase of another. The equity in one property is leveraged to buy more. The profits from one business fuel the growth of a second. Ownership builds on itself, and with each layer, wealth accelerates. 6. The mental shift. From consumer to owner. Most people are conditioned to consume. Advertising tells them to buy, borrow, and spend. Society rewards them for appearances, the car they drive, the clothes they wear, the gadgets they own. But the wealthy are conditioned to own. They ask different questions. Instead of asking, "What can I buy?" they ask, "What can I own that pays me?" Instead of asking, "What will this cost me?" they ask, "What will this return to me?" This shift is not about greed, it is about leverage. Ownership allows you to step off the treadmill of working endlessly for survival and step into the upward spiral of wealth. Ownership is not about having things, it's about having control, freedom, and the ability to multiply. 7. Legacy through ownership. Perhaps the greatest power of ownership is legacy. Consumption ends with you. Ownership continues after you. Assets can be passed on. Businesses can be inherited. Equity can be transferred. The rich do not just build wealth for themselves. They build structures that sustain generations. This is why wealthy families often remain wealthy, not because of luck, but because of ownership. Survival thinkers rarely leave behind assets. They leave behind debt. Scale thinkers leave behind ownership. And that ownership becomes the foundation on which the next generation builds. The conclusion is simple but powerful. Income pays the bills, but ownership builds wealth. Without ownership, you are always at risk. With ownership, you create security, freedom, and momentum. If you want to escape survival and enter scale, you must shift your focus from earning to owning, from consuming to multiplying, from wages to equity. In the next chapter, we will look at something even deeper, the role of vision. Because ownership begins with assets, but scaling begins with imagination. If you only think small, you will only own small. But if you think big, you open the door to abundance that multiplies without limit.
Scaling vision, the power of thinking big. At the heart of every fortune lies not just money, not just assets, not even systems, but vision. Vision is the seed of scale. It is the difference between those who remain stuck in survival and those who build wealth that transcends generations. Survival thinking shrinks your vision. Scale thinking expands it. And if you want to step into abundance, you must learn the power of thinking big. When you live in survival mode, your goals are small because your fears are big. You say things like, I just want to make enough to cover my bills. I just want to get out of debt. I just want to make it to the end of the month. These are not visions, they are survival wishes. They are defensive strategies. They are not dreams that expand your life, but boundaries that limit it. The wealthy, on the other hand, set goals that feel impossible to the average person. They don't just think about paying their bills, they think about building assets that cover their bills for life. They don't just think about surviving in their career, they think about creating businesses that employ thousands. They don't just think about themselves, they think about building legacies that change families, industries, even nations. Vision is power because it directs your focus. If your vision ends with survival, all your actions will end with survival. But if your vision expands to scale, your actions align with expansion. You will seek opportunities others miss. You will build systems others avoid. You will stretch yourself further than fear says you can go. Thinking big doesn't mean greed. It doesn't mean chasing luxury for its own sake. It means refusing to let fear and limitation define the boundaries of your life. It means asking questions that force you to grow. Instead of asking, how do I make $3,000 a month, you ask, how do I create $30,000 a month? Instead of asking, how do I pay this debt, you ask, how do I design a system that eliminates debt forever and produces surplus? Big vision forces big solutions. Think about the entrepreneurs who shaped history. Henry Ford didn't think, how do I sell a few cars? He thought, how do I make automobiles accessible to every family? Jeff Bezos didn't think, how do I sell books online? He thought, how do I build the everything store? Elon Musk didn't think, how do I build a car company? He thought, how do I accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy? These visions are massive, and because the vision was big, the results were big. The problem is, most people are afraid to think big because they fear disappointment. They would rather aim for something small and achieve it than aim for something great and fall short. But here's the irony. Small goals create small results. Big goals, even when missed, create bigger results than small goals ever could. If you aim for a mountain and only reach the hill, you are still further than the person who never left the ground. Vision also determines your identity. If your vision is to survive, you see yourself as a struggler, a fighter, someone who is always one step behind. If your vision is to scale, you see yourself as a builder, a creator, a multiplier. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes results. This is why wealthy people often appear more confident. Their vision has shaped their identity as someone who expands, not someone who merely survives. Vision also attracts resources. People are drawn to big visions. Investors invest in vision. Employees join companies with vision. Customers buy from leaders with vision. Survival thinkers repel resources because their vision is too small to inspire trust. Scale thinkers attract resources because their vision inspires others to believe in something larger than themselves. Here's the truth. Thinking small costs you more than thinking big. Small thinking keeps you in the same place. It keeps you dependent on one paycheck, one job, one fragile stream. Big thinking opens doors to opportunities you would never see otherwise. It forces you to ask, what if? And those two words have built more wealth than any paycheck ever could. But thinking big is not enough on its own. Vision without action is fantasy. The wealthy combine vision with systems, ownership, and execution. They dream big, but they also build structures that bring those dreams to life. They scale their vision by scaling their actions. So how do you expand your vision? Start by asking bigger questions. Instead of asking, how do I survive this year? Ask,
how do I create freedom for the next 10 years? Instead of asking, how do I make enough for myself, ask, how do I create so much abundance that I can impact others? The size of your questions determines the size of your future. Survival thinkers stay trapped in the small because they think safety comes from limitation. But safety comes from scale. It is safer to have multiple streams of income than one. It is safer to own assets than to rent. It is safer to think big and build buffers than to think small and live on the edge of collapse. The power of vision is this. It doesn't just change your goals, it changes your destiny. Once you start thinking bigger, you cannot go back. You see possibilities you never noticed before. You develop courage you never thought you had. You begin building ships, not clinging to life jackets. In the next chapter, we will explore momentum, the natural force that kicks in once your vision, ownership, and systems are aligned. Because once you begin to think big and act big, your wealth begins to move on its own. Momentum is how money stops being static and becomes unstoppable movement.
Momentum, turning money into movement. Wealth is not just about money, it is about momentum. Momentum is what happens when your money stops standing still and starts moving with power, speed, and direction. Momentum is the hidden force that transforms small beginnings into massive results. And this is where the rich separate themselves most clearly from the poor. Poor people let money sit, spend it, or watch it disappear. Rich people set money in motion. They understand that money is like energy, it must flow to grow. Think about a snowball. At the top of a hill, it starts small, barely noticeable. But once it begins rolling, it gathers more snow, more size, more speed. By the time it reaches the bottom, it is massive and unstoppable. That is momentum. Wealth works exactly the same way. One small decision, one small investment, one small stream of income, when set into motion and allowed to compound, becomes a force too powerful to stop. Survival thinkers never experience momentum because they spend everything they earn. Every paycheck resets to zero. They start the month over and over with nothing carried forward. There is no flow, no buildup, no forward force. It is like pushing a heavy rock up a hill, only to have it roll back down every 30 days. Exhausting, endless, and hopeless. Scale thinkers, however, understand that the goal is not just to make money, but to keep it moving in the right direction. They reinvest, they compound, they let money create more money. They let systems feed other systems, streams feed other streams, assets fuel more assets. Once the cycle begins, momentum takes over. Here's the secret. Momentum makes wealth easier over time. In the beginning, building wealth feels slow, heavy, and frustrating. You save $100, invest $500, launch a small side business. The progress feels tiny. But if you keep moving, the energy compounds. That $100 invested grows. That $500 reinvested multiplies. That small side business expands. And as time passes, the results accelerate. What once felt impossible begins to feel inevitable. Momentum is the opposite of survival. Survival is static. It resets each month, never building upon itself. Momentum is dynamic. It grows month after month, year after year, carrying you forward. Survival is like standing still in a river, fighting not to drown. Momentum is like riding the current, letting the water carry you faster and farther. Consider this. A poor person saves $500, but then a crisis comes and the $500 is gone, back to zero. A rich person invests $500 into an asset that produces returns. Even if a crisis comes, the asset continues to grow, creating momentum. The poor fight to hold on to what they have. The rich put what they have into motion. Momentum also changes your psychology. When you begin to see growth, when your money starts multiplying, your belief expands. You stop thinking in terms of scarcity. You start thinking in terms of possibility. You stop asking, how can I survive?
and start asking, how can I accelerate? Momentum creates confidence, and confidence creates even more momentum. This is why compounding is so powerful. Compounding is momentum in mathematical form. It turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. A single investment, reinvested again and again, creates exponential growth. But compounding only works if you keep money moving forward. The poor break momentum every time they consume their seeds. The rich protect momentum at all costs because they know it is the engine of exponential wealth. Momentum also applies beyond money. Ideas have momentum. Actions have momentum. Habits have momentum. Once you start thinking bigger, acting bolder, and building consistently, the energy compounds in every area of your life. Success attracts success. Opportunities attract opportunities. People want to work with you, invest with you, and join your vision because they can feel your momentum. Here's the danger. Momentum works both ways. Just as good decisions compound into abundance, bad decisions compound into poverty. Debt has momentum. Every month of minimum payments adds interest, snowballing into crushing weight. Fear has momentum. Every avoided risk shrinks your courage further until your world becomes smaller and smaller. Survival has momentum too, but it is the momentum of decline. This is why you must take control of momentum. The earlier you start, the easier it becomes. Small streams today become rivers tomorrow. Tiny habits today become unstoppable forces later. Wealth is not built overnight, but it is built by the power of consistent forward motion. So how do you create momentum? Start small, but start now. Don't wait for the perfect amount or the perfect moment. Momentum begins with movement. Even $10 invested, even one new skill learned, even one step taken matters because it sets the snowball rolling. Reinvest, don't reset. Poor people reset to zero each month. Rich people reinvest, letting money feed itself. Every return is planted again, building exponential growth. Protect your flow. Don't interrupt momentum with unnecessary consumption. Every time you eat the seed, you stop the harvest. Build discipline to keep money moving forward. Stack streams. Let one stream of income fund the next. Let one asset fuel another asset. Streams feeding streams create rivers. Rivers create oceans. Think long term. Momentum is not instant. It is slow at first, unstoppable later. Trust the process. Stay consistent. Let time do its work. The truth is, momentum is what transforms ordinary people into extraordinary successes. Not luck, not talent, not even intelligence, but the power of consistent forward motion compounded over time. So ask yourself, are you resetting every month or are you building momentum? Are you letting your money sit and disappear or are you putting it in motion to multiply? Are you surviving or are you accelerating? Because the difference between being trapped in survival and stepping into abundance is momentum. Once you create it, protect it, and expand it, wealth no longer feels like a struggle. It feels like a wave carrying you forward. And in the next chapter, we will face the practical side of this shift, how to break free from survival thinking once and for all. Because momentum cannot begin until you take the first step out of the cycle of fear, stress, and limitation and into the mindset of growth, abundance, and scale.
Breaking free from survival mindset. Escaping survival is not about earning more money first. It is about breaking free from the mindset that keeps you trapped. You can give someone in survival mode a higher paycheck and they will still live month to month. You can give them a financial windfall and within years it will vanish. Why? Because survival is not just a financial condition, it is a mental prison. And you cannot leave the prison until you break the bars of mindset. The survival mindset is built on fear, scarcity, and limitation. Fear of not having enough. Scarcity in believing resources are always lacking. Limitation in setting goals too small, defining success as just enough. To break free, you must replace fear with courage, scarcity with abundance, and limitation with vision. This is not just theory, it is the practical path to transforming your life. Step 1. Recognize the trap. You cannot escape what you refuse to see. The first step to breaking free is honesty. Ask yourself, do I only think in terms of this month? Do I define success as paying bills on time? Do I tell myself I cannot afford to invest, grow, or expand? Do I avoid risks because I fear losing what little I have? If the answer is yes, you are living in survival mode. Recognition is powerful because it wakes you up. It shows you that what you thought was normal is actually a trap. Step 2. Redefine what success means. For survival thinkers, success is not drowning. For scale thinkers, success is building ships that cross oceans. To break free, you must redefine success. Success is not just covering expenses. Success is creating overflow. Success is not, I made it to the end of the month. Success is I created streams that carry me into the future. The words you use to define success shape the actions you take. Redefine them and your behavior will shift. Step 3. Build small wins that create confidence. Survival thrives on helplessness, the belief that nothing can change. To break free, you need proof that growth is possible. This comes from small wins. Save your first $100 and protect it. Invest a small amount and watch it grow. Launch a small side hustle and earn your first $10 of extra income. These are not life-changing amounts, but they are mindset-changing actions. They prove to you that momentum is possible, and once you taste momentum, you never want to go back. Step 4. Shift from scarcity to abundance. Scarcity says there's never enough. Abundance says there's always more to create, more to build, more to expand. To shift, start asking abundance-based questions. Instead of, how do I cut costs? Ask, how do I create more income? Instead of, how do I survive this job? Ask, how do I build systems so I don't depend on this job? Instead of, what do I lack? Ask, what do I have that I can multiply? The questions you ask direct your brain. Scarcity questions shrink your world. Abundance questions expand it. Step 5. Learn to tolerate discomfort. Breaking free from survival means doing things that feel uncomfortable at first. Investing when you're afraid. Building a side hustle after work. Saying no to consumption so you can say yes to multiplication. Comfort keeps you in survival. Discomfort opens the door to scale. The wealthy are not fearless, they are willing to be uncomfortable for the sake of freedom. Step 6. Build systems, not just effort. Survival relies on self. Scale relies on systems. If you want to break free, you must start building structures that work without you. Even small ones. Automate your savings. Create passive income streams, no matter how small. Develop skills that produce returns over time. Every system is a brick in the wall of your financial freedom. Step 7. Surround yourself with scale thinkers. Mindsets are contagious. If everyone around you lives in survival, their fears will reinforce yours. To break free, you must surround yourself with those who think bigger. Read their books. Listen to their ideas. Work with people who talk about ownership, systems, abundance, and growth. The conversations you hear daily will either chain you to survival or lift you into scale. Step 8. Take action before you feel ready. Survival mindset says, wait until I have more money. Wait until I feel secure. Wait until the time is right. But waiting is what keeps you trapped. Action is what sets you free. You will never feel fully ready. You will always feel some fear. The secret is to act anyway. Start before you feel prepared and let learning happen along the way. Breaking free from survival is not about one dramatic leap. It is about consistent, courageous steps. It is about refusing to accept that enough is the best you can do. It is about choosing to create, to invest, to expand,
even when it feels uncomfortable. The truth is this: survival will always feel urgent, but it will never feel fulfilling. Scaling may feel risky at first, but it is the only path to freedom. You must choose: live in the cycle of survival or step into the journey of scale. And once you break free, even once, your mind will never go back. You will see what is possible. You will taste abundance, and you will know that you were never meant to simply survive. You were meant to scale. In the next chapter, we'll get practical. We'll uncover strategies and tools to make this mindset shift real in your daily life, because breaking free is only the first step. Building abundance requires strategies you can apply every single day.
Practical strategies to shift from survival to scale. Breaking free from survival begins in the mind, but it must continue in action. Mindset is the foundation, but strategy builds the structure. Many people realize they are trapped in survival thinking, but they don't know how to move beyond it. They understand the theory, but struggle to apply it. This chapter is designed to change that. It will give you practical strategies, step by step, action by action, to help you shift from survival to scale. The good news is this: you don't need to be wealthy already to begin. You don't need a massive windfall, an inheritance, or a high-paying job. You need discipline, clarity, and consistent application. Wealth is not built in one giant leap. It is built in small steps, repeated over time, that create momentum. Let's walk through the strategies. 1. Reframe how you see money. The first strategy is mental but critical. Stop seeing money as something to spend and start seeing it as something to use. Every dollar that enters your hand can either end as consumption or continue as multiplication. Before you spend anything, ask, will this dollar disappear or will this dollar multiply? This simple question forces you to think like a scale builder instead of a survival thinker. 2. Create margin between income and expenses. Survival happens when every dollar you earn is already spent. To break free, you must create margin. This means lowering expenses or increasing income so that something is left over every month. Even $50 is enough to start. That $50 is your seed money. Protect it fiercely. Margin is the oxygen of scaling. Without it, you suffocate. With it, you breathe, grow, and expand. 3. Automate your growth. Discipline is powerful, but automation is stronger. If you rely only on willpower, emergencies and emotions will win. Instead, set up automatic transfers that move a percentage of your income into savings or investments before you can spend it. Treat it like a bill you pay to your future self. Poor people wait to save what is left after spending. Rich people save first and spend what is left. 4. Build multiple income streams. We saw in earlier chapters that survival depends on one river. Scaling requires many. Start with one extra stream, no matter how small. Freelancing, teaching online, renting out a room, selling products, creating digital content, the options are endless. Once one stream is flowing, build another. Small streams combine into powerful rivers. The more streams you have, the safer and freer you become. 5. Invest consistently, not occasionally. Many people wait for the perfect time to invest. That time never comes. The wealthy know the secret is consistency. They invest regularly, even in small amounts, and let compounding do the heavy lifting. Buy assets, not toys. Stocks, index funds, real estate, businesses, anything that multiplies. It's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. 6. Own, don't just rent. Ownership creates equity. Equity creates wealth.
Wherever possible, shift from being a renter to being an owner. Renters pay forever. Owners build forever. This doesn't just mean property. Own assets, own businesses, own intellectual property, own systems that produce income. Every step into ownership is a step out of survival. 7. Build skills that scale. One of the greatest assets you can ever own is your ability to create value. Learn skills that multiply your earning power. Digital skills, leadership, sales, investing, systems design. Poor people say, "I can't afford education." Rich people say, "I can't afford not to." Every skill you master is another tool for scaling. 8. Redefine risk. Survival thinkers see risk as dangerous. Scale thinkers see risk as opportunity. The truth is, staying in survival mode is the riskiest choice of all. Inflation, emergencies, and time will destroy you if you never expand. Start taking calculated risks. Invest in something small. Start a side hustle on the side. Test, learn, adapt. Every bold step stretches your comfort zone and breaks the chains of fear. 9. Surround yourself with builders. Your environment shapes your results. If everyone around you is stuck in survival thinking, their mindset will keep you small. Seek out communities, mentors, and peers who think in terms of abundance and scaling. Their conversations will challenge you, inspire you, and expand you. Remember, proximity is power. Get close to people who are building ships, not clinging to life jackets. 10. Shift your language. Words shape reality. Stop saying, "I can't afford it." Start saying, "How can I afford it?" Stop saying, "I just need to get by." Start saying, "I'm building abundance." Your language trains your brain. Speak in terms of growth, and your mind will begin to see opportunities instead of limitations. 11. Track and measure progress. Survival thinkers avoid looking at numbers because they are afraid. Scale thinkers track everything. Track your income, your expenses, your savings, your investments. Measure progress monthly. Celebrate small wins. What gets measured grows. You cannot scale what you do not track. 12. Protect momentum at all costs. Momentum is fragile at first. Emergencies, fear, or distractions can break it. Protect it like your life depends on it, because your financial life does. If you save $100, don't touch it. If you start a side hustle, don't quit after a month. If you invest, don't withdraw too early. Momentum requires discipline, but once it's rolling, it becomes unstoppable. 13. Practice delayed gratification. Survival loves instant gratification. That's why money disappears. Scaling requires patience. Learn to wait. Learn to reinvest. Learn to sacrifice comfort today for freedom tomorrow. Every time you delay gratification, you multiply your future rewards. Every time you give in to consumption, you shrink them. 14. Dream beyond enough. Finally, never stop expanding your vision. If you aim for survival, you'll get survival. If you aim for abundance, you'll create overflow. Set goals that stretch you. Write them down. Say them daily. Let your vision pull you forward. Remember, money follows vision, and the bigger your vision, the bigger your abundance. Putting it all together. These strategies are not complex. They are simple, but they require commitment. They require you to shift from reacting to life to designing it, from surviving to scaling, from living paycheck to paycheck to building streams, systems, and ownership that create freedom. The truth is, there is nothing special about the rich except this: they apply these strategies consistently. They reframe money, they create margin, They automate growth, they multiply streams, they invest consistently, they own assets, they build skills, they redefine risk, they surround themselves with builders, they shift their language, they track their progress, they protect momentum, they delay gratification, and they dream bigger. And because they live this way, wealth becomes inevitable. In the next chapter, we will bring it all together. We will conclude this journey by looking at the bigger picture, why the choice between survival and scale is not just about money, but about life. Because at the end of the day, the question is simple. Will you spend your life clinging to survival, or will you build ships that carry you into abundance? Conclusion. Build ships, not life jackets. You've now walked through the entire journey, from survival to scale, from scarcity to abundance, from fear to freedom. We've uncovered the traps of survival thinking, the psychology of fear and stress, the power of scaling, the role of ownership, the necessity of systems, the force of momentum, and the practical strategies that make the shift possible. But before we end, let's step back and look at the big picture. Let's ask, what does this really mean for your life? At its core, the choice is simple. You can spend your life building life jackets, or you can spend your life building ships. Life jackets keep you afloat, but only barely. They are temporary, fragile, and exhausting. Ships, on the other hand, are strong, scalable, and expansive. Life jackets are survival. Ships are scale. Most people settle for life jackets. They live paycheck to paycheck. They measure success by getting through another month. They define stability as keeping the lights on. And while they may survive, they never thrive. They never see what life could be if they built something bigger. The wealthy build ships. They design systems that carry them across oceans. They build ownership that lasts beyond themselves. They expand their vision so far that it outlives them. Their wealth is not just money. It is freedom, legacy, and impact. Survival is not security. One of the greatest illusions of survival is the belief that it is safe. As long as I can pay my bills, I'm secure. But this is false. Survival is fragile. One lost job, one illness, one crisis, and the entire structure collapses. Real security is not found in survival. It is found in scale. Multiple income streams, owned assets, automated systems, these create true stability. When you rely on yourself alone, you are one step away from drowning. When you build ships, you are untouchable by the storms. Scaling is not greed. Some people hesitate to think big because they confuse abundance with greed. But scaling is not about greed, it is about capacity. Abundance gives you the ability to live freely, give generously, and build boldly. You cannot help others if you can barely help yourself. Overflow creates impact. When you multiply, you don't just create wealth for yourself, you create opportunities, jobs, innovations, and legacies that change lives. The cycle of survival ends with you. For many, survival is generational. Parents live in survival mode, so children inherit the same fears, the same limitations, the same scarcity mindset. But you have the power to end the cycle. By shifting to scale, you create a new pattern. You leave behind not debt, but assets, not stress, but stability, not scarcity, but abundance. You become the one who breaks the chain and sets the next generation free. The ship metaphor. Imagine again the ocean. The poor and middle class cling to life jackets. They float, but every wave feels like a threat. The wealthy sail ships. The waves that terrify others become the winds that carry them forward. They are not afraid of the ocean, they master it. And the difference is not luck,
It is design. They chose to build ships, not cling to life jackets. A call to action. Now it is your turn. Ask yourself, am I living in survival or in scale? Am I clinging to life jackets or am I building ships? Am I limiting my goals to enough or am I expanding them to abundance? The truth is, the gap between the poor and the rich is not just money, it is mindset. One thinks in terms of survival, the other thinks in terms of scale. One reacts, the other creates. One limits, the other expands. You cannot control the storms of life. You cannot control the economy, the job market, or the unexpected crises. But you can control what you build. You can choose to keep patching life jackets month after month, or you can choose to build a ship strong enough to carry you through anything. The final lesson: if your vision ends with survival, your wealth ends with survival. If your vision expands to scale, your wealth expands with it. The choice is yours. The path is clear. Do not settle for just surviving. Do not shrink your goals to enough. Do not live your entire life clinging to fragile life jackets that will eventually fail. Build ships. Build systems. Build ownership. Build momentum. Build abundance. And one day you will look back and realize that you are no longer trapped by the cycle of survival. You are no longer anxious about the next month. You are no longer bound by fear and scarcity. You are free. You are thriving. You are sailing into the ocean of abundance, carried by the momentum of the ship you chose to build. Closing words. This is not just about money. It is about life. Survival is existing. Scaling is living. Survival is fear. Scaling is freedom. Survival is the bare minimum. Scaling is abundance beyond imagination. So today, make the decision. Stop patching life jackets. Start building ships. Because the ocean of opportunity is waiting, and you were never meant to just stay afloat. You were meant to sail.